Good afternoon, everybody. David Shuster here on Take Action News, a special inauguration edition of our show. A very, very special welcome to our new Vice President in charge of board operations. Rich Webster is in the house. Rich Webster running the board. Daniel Marin's our executive producer. Great to have all of you who are listening on We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., our syndicated stations, TakeActionNews.com, WeActRadio.com, and some of you who are going to watch this sometime, I presume, over Take Action News TV, our YouTube channel. What a great show we have coming up. Cliff Schechter is going to talk about the latest proposals for gun control. Alan Rosenblatt's going to talk about a huge week in social media. John Feary, former spokesperson for Republican House Speaker Dennis Hastert's going to join us to talk about what's going on with some of the Republicans. And David Frum, also a very interesting guy on the right. He will join us to get his perspective. But I want to start with something that happened in terms of D.C.'s home rule, the opportunity for D.C. statehood. Inadvertently this past week, Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky said something where he was talking about guns and gun control, but he made the perfect case for D.C. statehood. Listen.
I'm against having a king. I think having a monarch is what we fought the American Revolution over, and someone who wants to bypass the Constitution, bypass Congress, that's someone who wants to act like a king or a monarch.
Exactly. Somebody who wants to act like a king or a monarch, like Congress, and the way Congress handles the District of Columbia. As it stands right now, and a lot of folks don't realize this, Washington, D.C. has no representation, no voting representation in either the Senate or the House. We do have a Congresswoman, Eleanor Holmes Norton. She was on our show last week, but she is not allowed to vote on the House floor. So in other words, all the issues that affect D.C. residents, issues of taxation, issues of government spending, cutting government programs, war, peace, entitlement programs, health, everything, Washington, D.C. has no vote. And as we've pointed out before, Washington, D.C. has a greater population than 2 states. It has more military, active duty military than 19 states. It's got a greater gross domestic product than 19 states. It's got a higher contribution in federal tax revenue. D.C. contributes more money in federal taxes than 29 states. And yet D.C. does not have statehood. And the fact of the matter is, Rand Paul is absolutely right. Yes, we did fight the Revolutionary War because of taxation without representation, because there was a king, there was a monarch, and there was a British Parliament that were imposing taxes, imposing rules on the colonial citizens of the United States back then in America, the Americas. The colonists were being forced to pay taxes, and they were not represented in the British Parliament. They didn't have a say. So when Rand Paul says we should not have a king, we should not have a monarchy, that's what we fought the revolution for, he's right. And there should be a revolution. It's time for everybody to stand up and say, okay, no more taxation without representation. We fought the Revolutionary War for it. We should now fight for D.C. statehood. It is unfair, and it is against our nation's founding for Washington, D.C. not to have a vote in either the Senate or the House. Daniel Marins? Rand Paul. Who knew that Rand Paul was a supporter of D.C. statehood?
That's right, David. And I think that this needs to be a cause célèbre with all of these constitutionalist, libertarian types. There are 618,000 people, citizens of the United States of America, full paying taxpayers who do not have full voting representation in Congress. And it's a travesty. And if anyone cares about the Constitution, if anyone cares about our democracy, they need to make this their cause. And that's why I'm so glad that you started a petition online this week on signon.org, and the petition basically says it tells Congress to pass Eleanor Holmes Norton's bill, the new Columbia Admission Act, right away. And we're going to be posting that on Twitter and on Facebook and on the TakeActionNews.com website, and people can join, and we're looking for thousands of signatures. It's an ongoing movement. The only time statehood was put to a vote on the House floor was 1993, and it failed miserably. And that was at a time when I believe they were also trying to add a congressional district in Utah. So it's been a long time coming.
It sure has. And a lot of people on the Republicans will say, well, wait a second, the Constitution forbids statehood for the District of Columbia. And yes, it's true. Article 1, Section 8, it says Congress shall have the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. In other words, yes, Congress shall have power over this district, the seat of government. And while there's a maximum, 10 miles square, which is 100 square miles, there's no minimum. The Constitution doesn't say that this could be small. In other words, Congress right now could say, look, we're going to make the District of Columbia, everything from the Capitol building along the mall to the White House and the Lincoln Memorial, that's the District of Columbia, and everything outside all those residential areas, that's New Columbia. And New Columbia should be a state and should have voting representation. That is essentially what Eleanor Holmes Norton's bill would do. It's something that some members of the Senate proposed at the end of the term in 2012. It's something that is constitutional. It's something that is long overdue. TakeActionNews.com for more information. We're going to pause in about 15 seconds and let our syndicated stations catch up with us. So great to have everybody watching. A special hello to everybody watching in Bloomington, Indiana. Thanks, Mom, Dad, Rose, Robert. Thanks for being part of the program. We pause in just a couple of seconds for our syndicated stations. You're listening and you're watching to Take Action News.